A good Shabbos, everyone. Erev Shabbos, everyone. As we learn the special segment known as For the Shabbos Table, being specially broadcasted to you this week from Deerfield Beach, Florida, and we are, as always, sponsored by the Rubin family with a special request to be mispal that they should be zeicher to a healthy ben zachar, and also that they should have atzlach and ruchnias and gashmias. So, in this week's parsha, of course, we learn the whole gamut of Jewish jurisprudence in Parshas Mishptim. And the very obvious question is, of all the things to start Parshas Mishptim with, I mean, we could have started it with, Im Kesef Tal Ve'es Amayes, Ani Imach, the mitzvah, the highest mitzvah of tzedakah, the Rambam says, is Ve'chazakta Bay, to, give strength to a person who's struggling. We could have started with Shemrim, the laws of how to properly guard things that people entrusted us with. Very obvious different things, and we start with the very rare case of Nimkar Bezdin, where a person steals, robs a bank, and he can't make restitution, he has no assets, so we sell him, and with that money we compensate the victim, and he's an Eved for 6 years. I mean, that's what you start with, especially since the Torah was written for all generations, and Hashem, who is the Yodea HaSidus, knows that there would be many years where there wouldn't be slavery anymore, and the Torah is given for every decade. It says, Asher Anochi Mitzavcha Yoim, B'chol Yoim V'Yoim Yiyu Beinecha Kechadoshes. Every day it should be as if it's given new. There's no expiration date to the Torah. So obviously the laws of slavery are applicable even after Abraham Lincoln. Why did the Torah give us, why did it start Mishpatim with this? So I always felt that the Jewish way of rehabilitating a criminal shows us the difference between the Torah way and the secular way, the Gentile way, in a very stark contrast. Let's take the way our society rehabilitates a criminal. Somebody is caught robbing a bank, so he's put into jail. He's put into jail, he was caught, he was armed, he menaced with a gun, and he's given 6 years in a maximum security jail. During those 6 years, he has now gone to the College of Crime. Beforehand, he didn't know how to jump a car. In the joint, so to speak, he will learn how to, steal a car. He will learn where he could find drug dealers to make a good commission. He will learn more places to find a piece, to find a gun. So we're giving him the College of Crime. That's our rehabilitation. While he's in there for 6 years, what happens to his wife and kids? They lost their breadwinner. So what do? The children become juvenile delinquents. The wife ends up on the street. It's a disaster. That's what happens to the children. And then, who pays for this? The 6 years that he's in the jail is paid by the taxpayer. He's given food, he's given lodging, it's all paid by the taxpayer. And does the victim ever get compensated for what was stolen from him? Of course not. That's the Goyish way of doing things. Now let's look at how the Torah rehabilitates a criminal. And you see the stark contrast. The Torah says, man stole, he doesn't have what to compensate the victim. We're going to sell him to a good family, only a good family. That's why it's Nimker Bezdin. Bezdin's going to sell him to an Erlicha family that's going to be mashpia for 6 years, influence him on how to live correctly, discipline him, how to work, how to live. He's going to see he's living in a good house. Now the Torah says that if the man has a wife and children, the one who buys him has to support the wife and children. That's why he's given the privilege of giving the Eved a Shifcha Kananis to breed slaves, so that compensates him for taking care of the wife and the children. But we're not leaving the wife and children on the street. Now, when he pays money to buy this slave for 6 years, what does Bezdin do? They don't pocket the money. Bezdin gives it to the ones that were robbed. So it compensates right away the victim. Who does this fall on? Not a penny on the taxpayer. This is the way that the Torah rehabilitates a Jewish criminal. And this is the reason why, to show this contrast, this is why the Torah starts with Avdus. Now it happens to be that Reb Shamshon Rafal Hirsch, Zeich Tzadik Levracha, Schus Yogan Aleinu, adds another caveat. And he says that the Torah wants to show us how a Jew should behave even with this lowly individual. He's a thief. He stole a huge amount. He had to be sold as a slave. So you'll say, listen, he's from the dregs of the Jewish society. But it says, Ki toiv lo imach. It has to be good for him with you. And the Gemara tells us that you can't eat steak and serve him tuna fish. You can't sleep in an air-conditioned room and have him sleep without an air conditioner. You can't sleep on a Daxiana bed and give him a cot. You can't have anything that he doesn't have. I mean, the Torah puts, not only that, the Torah says you can't tell him to do something that you don't need. I mean, you want to keep him busy, so you tell him to warm something up. If you don't need it, you can't tell him to do that. So Reb Shamshon Rafal Hirsch is telling us that the Torah is teaching you how you have to treat even the lowest in the community. And it's interesting because it says, of course, in this week's Parsha, the din of the Arei Miklat, the city of refuge, that if someone kills someone b'shogeg, so he has to go to one of the 6 Arei Miklat. The Arei Miklat were the cities of the Leviim. And the Chinuch, the master of the mitzvah, says, why do we send him to the Arei Leviim, to the city of the Levites? Because the Leviim were Avdei Hashem. They were more spiritual. And therefore they'll treat him properly. They'll tell him, they'll give him chizuk. You only killed b'shogeg, you're not a murderer. If you send him somewhere else, people won't treat him well. They'll say, you're a killer, you cost somebody his life, you weren't careful. So you see that when a person is more spiritual, such a person it treats even the lower elements of our society well. We know if he knocks out the eye of his servant or the tooth, the slave is yotze b'shein v'ayin. He goes free if you knock out a tooth or knock out an eye, lo yaleinu. In the Shalos Tshuvos Rivash, in the response to the Rivash declares a halachic shaila. He says, what happens if the Eved starts a fight with you? He picks a fight with the master. Says to the master, your wife isn't nice, your children aren't nice, your home isn't well run, and because of that they have an argument, and it ends up the master knocks out his tooth, hits him in the eye, do we say he goes free, or do we say that since the slave started it, he doesn't go free? The Chassam Sofer, Zeich Tzaddik L'Bracha, Zchus Yagin Aleinu, brings an answer to this. It's so interesting how the Chassam Sofer answers this question. The Chassam Sofer says that the Gemara in Brachas on Daf Hey says that Rabbi Yehuda says that if a person sins, then Yesurin Memarkin Avonosav Shaladam. Suffering cleanses a person. Kal v'chaymer m'shein v'ayin. He's a madach, shein and ayin is only one limb. And with it a person is freed. So suffering, which affects the entire body, of course the person is freed from the effects of his sin. But the Chassam Sofer says, but there we started it. We started it by sinning. And you still see it helps. That's the raya of the Chassam Sofer. Ki yitein ish el re'eyu kesef oy kelim lishmar. So of course this is the sugya of shomrim, right? We learn that there's a shomer chinam, a shomer that watches it for free, so he's only chayiv, he's only liable for pshia, for negligence. Then there's a shomer socher, a paid watchman, who's chayiv b'gneva v'aveda, even if it was stolen or lost. So the Oyel Aryeh, Reb Leibel Katz, Tzaddik L'Bracha, Zchus Yagin Aleinu, brings down a story about a mashgiach in the yeshiva that went to Rav Shach to ask him a weighty question. He found a bocher in his yeshiva that he was mechalel Shabbos. He desecrated Shabbos pretty bad. And he wanted to know if it was all right and proper for him to throw the boy out of the yeshiva. Of course, that has devastating repercussions for the boy. He throws him out of yeshiva, who knows what is going to happen to him. But because he desecrated the Shabbos, it could affect the rest of the boys very negatively. So could he throw him out of the yeshiva? And that we say that we learn out when you throw out someone from Sarah, that she said that Yishmael should be thrown out because he was mitzachek, he was over the Zarah, Gil Aroy, Shvichas Damim. So Rav Shach asked the mashgiach 3 questions. He asked him, do you know who the boy's friends are? Do you know what his family circumstance is? And do you know if he has pocket money to buy nash for himself? And the mashgiach said, I don't know. So Rav Shach scolded him. He said, you should know you're a murderer. He says, you should know that we are custodians for these boys. When we take these boys into yeshiva, we become shomer. And as a shomer, we have to know about these boys. We have to know what's going on in their lives. The Chavetz Chaim says that Rebbeim and Melamdim and Moros that get paid are Shomrei Sachar. They're paid watchmen. They're chayiv ba'aveda. They're chayiv if the child gets lost. It's a big responsibility. We have to know. A rabbi has to know about what's going on in the home. Why is he behaving this way? Is he out of work? We have to know these things. Now, it's interesting that the Beis HaLevi, from the house of Brisk, he says, we know that the great declaration, Na'aseh v'nishma. Why do we say Na'aseh v'nishma? Each one of us should have said Eseh v'eshma. I will do and I will listen. Why do we say it in the plural? Na'aseh v'nishma. So the Beis HaLevi says, because we accepted responsibility on each other. There's a very frightening Rambam. Very frightening Rambam. In Hilchos Tshuva, the Rambam lists a scary list of behaviors that are hard to do tshuva on. It's a list of she'ein maspikin biyodei lasas tshuva. He won't reach to do tshuva. For example, one Example is a person who always says, Echte v'ashav, I'll sin and then I'll do tshuva. That's a bottomless pit. That's quicksand. Because then a person will always say, yeah, I'll sin and then later I'll do tshuva. There's no end to that. But the Rambam says, included in this also, and it's very interesting that he includes this, is Mi sheyesh biyodei limchais ve'ena meicha, somebody who could protest and doesn't protest. Because, you don't think that you're really, when are you going to do tshuva? When you think you're doing a crime. A person says, look, I have my own problems. It's none of my business. That guy's in Russia. What do you want from me? The person won't do tshuva. But you should know that we're responsible. Now, we have different levels of responsibilities. One of the biggest responsibilities of a person is ha'ish nitfas al anshe beisai. A husband is held accountable for the people in his home. So if a husband hears his wife speaking Lashon Hara on the phone and doesn't say anything, that's not good. That's not good. And it's also very hard to say anything because, nobody wants to be a mashgiach with their wife. The mashgiach was the most unpopular person in the yeshiva. You don't want to be unpopular with your wife. But we can't turn a blind eye either. Now, in this week's parsha, we have the very famous pasuk of Im kesef talve es ami es ani imach. If you give a loan to my nation, to the poor that's with you. So there's a famous Rashi. Rashi says there's 3 places in the Torah that even though it says if, it's not optional. And this is one of the 3 places. That even though it says it's not something that's optional, but rather if somebody needs a loan, you should give it to them. Now, the other Rishonim say it means you could only give a loan if you have discretionary money. If you don't have discretionary money, you can't give a loan. So im kesef talve, if you do have discretionary money, I always learned that a person has a choice. If they have money that's available, they could either use it for loans or they could use it to give tzedakah. Now it happens to be that the Gemara says that it's a greater mitzvah to give a loan because you don't embarrass the person. But loans are not for everybody. You need a cast iron stomach when it comes to loans. Because the halacha is if you see somebody who owes you money and it's past the deadline, but you know that they don't have the money, you're not supposed to ask them for it. And that becomes a very hard thing for people to do. And they get sick over it. So if you don't have a cast iron stomach, then don't be in the business of loans. Give your discretionary money to charity, then you won't get upset of it. That's a possible shot in the because it's a choice whether you should use your discretionary money for loans or you should use it for charity. There is another famous pshat in this pasuk, is we know that ein melavin la'adam lekesef v'leizav. A person is not escorted to their final resting place, not with money, not with gold, but rather only with Torah mitzvahs. But im kesef talve esami. If you want your money to escort you, if we want our money to escort us to our final resting place, esa'ani imach. What you give to the poor, that will escort you. That money will escort you. Now it happens to be that if you give somebody a loan, in Choshen Mishpat, Siman Ayin, Sif Aleph, it paskins categorically that you should give it in front of witnesses, or at least have a shtar, a document. Because otherwise the person might say, I don't know if at the end I took so much money, and it could cause a person to cheat, and you would be able to naiver, causing a person to stumble. So therefore, pshat in the pasuk would be im kesef talve. If you give a loan, es ami, you should give it in front of people. Es ani, but if you give charity, imach, Do it privately. Don't embarrass. Now, there's a famous Rabbeinu Ephraim. Rabbeinu Ephraim is a Rishon, and of course he was an expert in gematrias. The word kesef is b'gematria 160, right? Chof is 20, Samach is 60, that's 80, and Pei is 80, is 160. Says Rabbeinu Ephraim, eitz is also b'gematria 160. Ayin is 70, Tzadi is 90, is 160. He says that's pshat eitz chayim hi l'machazikim bo. It's a tree of life to those that hold it, because tzedakah tatzim amavis. And of course we know what's the simple pshat of eitz chayim hi l'machazikim bo. It's referring to Torah. Right? Eitz chayim hi l'machazikim bo, it's a tree of life. That's eitz chayim, that's Torah. Ki chayim heim l'moitze'eyem. And that's why it says in the pasuk, b'chesed ve'emes yechuper avim. With kindness and truth. Truth is Torah. To emes knei v'al timker. Truth is Torah. With chesed and emes, with tzedakah and Torah, yechuper avim, sins are atoned for, and then of course we live longer. Now, since we're benching Rosh Chodesh Adar this Shabbos, you should know that there's a Tosfos in Megillah on Daf Yud Gimel. Tosfos in Megillah says, ha-kesef is b'gematria ha'etz. Kesef is eitz, so ha-kesef is ha'etz. When Achashverosh told Haman, ha-kesef nasan lach, the money you want to give me, I give it to you. He was alluding to him, ha'etz nasan lach. At the end, you're going to be hung on the tree that you want to hang Mordechai. Right? He was niba, ve'eni yodea ma niba. He prophesied, he didn't know what he was prophesying. It says, achrei rabim lahatais. After the majority, you should tilt. We follow, in Judaism, we follow the majority. So therefore the obvious question is, so then we should believe in Christianity. There's many more people that believe in Christianity than believe in Judaism. It says, achrei rabim lahatais. And the answer that the Mefarshim give is we only go after the majority when we have a doubt. About our emunah in Hashem, we have no doubts. There's no suffix. We have to go after the majority. In the case of a suffix, we don't have any suffix. It says in the pasuk, "Va'avadetem es Hashem Elokeichem," you should serve Hashem your God. Uveirach es lachmecha ve'es meimecha, and He will bless your bread and your water. So everybody asks, so it seems to be that there's reward for serving Hashem. But we know that we learn categorically, schar mitzvah b'hayal maleka, that there's no reward for mitzvahs in this world. So what does it mean that Hashem will bless us because we served Hashem? So the Mefarshim first of all lie out certain things, that although we say schar mitzvah b'hayal maleka, and it's explained that the reason why there's no reward for mitzvahs in this world is because there's no bank big enough to cash the check of even one mitzvah. It's like, you win the lottery and you win $600,000 and you go to a bank in South Fallsburg and you want to, cash the check. You say, look, we don't have $600,000. In all of our branches, we don't have $600,000. There's no bank big enough on this world to cash the check of just one mitzvah. However, the Mefarshim say that we do get schar in this world for zrizas, for doing things with alacrity. We do get schar in this world for mesiras nefesh, when we sacrifice to do something. And we do get schar in this world for hiddur, when we make the mitzvah prettier. Besides this, there's a Rambam in the beginning of Masechtas Peah, in the Pirush Mishnayos, who says something so incredibly fundamental. The Rambam says that there is schar mitzvah in this world for Bein Adam L'Chaveira. It's a Rambam. So it's in the beginning, check it up. It's in the beginning of Masechtas Peah, in the Pirush Mishnayos, a Rambam, check it up, take out your Yochanan Boy's Mishnayos, check it up. He says there is schar mitzvah in this world for mitzvahs bein adam l'chavei. That means that you do something nice to your spouse, there's schar in this world. It means you do something nice for your parents, there's schar in this world. If you help out a friend, there's schar in this world. It's a Ferish Rambam. Now, I don't want to leave this without telling you that many learn that it's not even a question, because when it says that Hashem will give us parnasa, that's not schar. That's, if Hashem sees we do mitzvahs, then He enables us to continue living a life of mitzvahs. That's not schar. And that's the meaning of what it says, schar mitzvah mitzvah. The reward of a mitzvah is a mitzvah. Hashem says, you're learning? Okay, I'm going to help you to be able to learn further. Yeah, you're living correctly? You're living honestly? I'm going to help you continue learning. That's not a schar. That's how they all learn. In B'chukaisai Seilechu. So there's a lot of rewards there. In Parshas B'chukaisai, those aren't rewards. That's simply that Hashem will enable you to continue living. But without that, let's remember the things that we learned here now. Very important ideas. The schar mitzvah, hayom la'asoisam, u'mocha l'kabel scharim. The schar mitzvah itself, today we do them, in the next world we get reward. But for the zrizas, for the alacrity, for the mesiras nefesh, for the sacrifice, for the hidur, for making it pretty and better than usual, nicer than the norm, and for mitzvahs bein adam l'chaveiroi, there is reward. Again, we want to thank the Ruben family for making this special segment for the Shabbos table possible. I also want to say that this week, because I am in Florida, the Daf Yomi Sunday through Thursday is at 9 p.m. instead of 8 p.m. And you tune in by going to zoomdaf.com and putting in meeting code RMMW, all in capitals. Motzei Shabbos to share is 8:30. We want to thank you very much for joining us and wish you a good day and a good Shabbos.